Shout out to the 11,000 real ones who have subscribed to the channel. And as promised on yesterday's video, if we got to 11K, I would take a shot at tequila. So appreciate everyone for subscribing to the channel. The next milestone is 12K. Shout out Bimbo Coles. If you know, you know. And here we go, baby. Let's get started. Alright, before we start today's show, if you know who Bimbo Coles is, type me down below, and I'm going to be checking to see if you're lying or not. But either way, it's time to bring Donovan Mitchell to the Miami Heat. The Cavs season wrapped up yesterday, and the rumors surrounding Cleveland are absolutely flying surrounding Garland and Donovan Mitchell. So we have to talk about it and how it affects the Miami Heat. But before we do that, we are struggling in our likes battle, or I guess the leaderboard for the month of May. We're currently sitting in 4th place, and that's just flat out unacceptable. I'm a diehard competitor. You guys know that, and I'm not trying to lose to Knicks now, Celtics today, and 76ers now. We lead on the Bulls report, and I ain't too worried about those bums over in Chicago, but the other three, they do concern me, so hit that thumbs up button and help us out in the month of May. All right, the reason why a lot of rumors are flying is the Cavs season is officially over. They lost in 5 games, just like the Miami Heat, to the Boston Celtics in the second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs. And honestly, that series went exactly how it went against Miami. The Celtics dominated game 1. Then the Cavs came out, or like the Heat did, and shot unconscious from 3 on the road to win game 2. And then it just went all downhill from there. But now that the season is over, all eyes turn towards an extension for Donovan Mitchell, and I don't know if it's going to happen, but either way, the noise linking Mitchell to Miami is as loud as ever. Zach Lowe from ESPN on Get Up this morning saying that the Heat have been connected with Mitchell over the years. They are lurking, and they have a lot of stuff to offer in terms of picks and young players. Well, I do want to push back on that. A lot of stuff to offer in picks. Not the case. The Heat could only offer 2 picks, it being the 15th pick in the 2024 NBA draft, and that has to happen on draft night, or just in kind of written an almost handshake deal of take the player they would have taken at 15 and then move him afterwards. But I do agree that the Heat have a lot to offer in terms of players, and that is the interesting thing to watch here. And this is not even just specific to Cleveland. This is specific to any team that has a player that's all-star caliber that could be on the move. What does that team want in return? Does the team trading that all-star, all-NBA type player want picks back, or do they want young players that can make a difference and grow with them to be with that team for the next 5 to 7 years? Because if they're choosing the player-led package, then Miami has probably the second best trade package out there behind maybe OKC and the Houston Rockets, because you can offer Jaquez, Jovic, and Hero. And believe it or not, those are 3 good young players all under the age of 24. But if you want picks, well, then that's where Miami struggles, because they could only offer the 2, and teams like the Lakers, who can offer 3. The Rockets can offer 9. Well, they wouldn't do that, but they have 9 tradable firsts, and the same thing with the Nets and the Thunder, and like 12 first-round picks they can trade. So I'm going to be honest, it's going to be tough for Miami if Cleveland wants picks. But if they want players, then they're in the running. And I do want to say this surrounding the Cavs right now. It's messy, folks. Like, the season has not even been over for 24 hours, and it is really ugly in the city of Cleveland right now. We'll start with this from Chris Fedor, who covers the team on the beat. He said that Mitchell grew frustrated with some teammates' lack of maturity, focus, and playoff-level readiness and willingness to listen. That isn't the only report that came out. Mitchell was also not happy with how Cleveland handled the final game of the season. As you know, they did not play their starters against the Charlotte Hornets. The Cavs lost that game, put them to the 4 seed, and guess what? They ended up having to play Boston in the second round. But if they won that game, I think they would have been the 3rd seed, and they would have ended up playing, obviously, the Knicks in the second round and the Pacers in the first round and had a better chance, if you ask me. But Shams Charania kind of had a different story here, and this one includes Darius Garland, which is the most fascinating story out of all of this, if we're going to be honest. Shams said rival executive believes the Cavs will have to seriously evaluate the fit of Mitchell and Garland and ultimately may have to choose one or the other. Should Mitchell decide to stay long-term, sources briefed on the matter say Garland's representation, Clutch Sports CEO Rich Paul, which, by the way, quick interjection, Shams and Clutch Sports are very tight, and that's where he gets most of his sources from, would have a conversation with Cavs officials on potentially finding a new home for the one-time All-Star. So if you take Shams at his words, which I would because he is very tight with players, as Woj is more tight with front offices. So that seems like it's coming strictly from Darius Garland. So either Mitchell doesn't sign a long-term extension, and the Cavs likely move on from him in the offseason via trade, or Donovan Mitchell does sign a long-term extension, and Darius Garland is going to request a trade. It does certainly look like it's heading to a breakup of Garland and Donovan Mitchell in that Cavs backcourt. It's just all a matter of who, and if Miami would have interest in Darius Garland as well, which we'll talk about in just a second. But let me ask you this. Which player stays in Cleveland for another season? Because things had, I think one of them is going to be gone when we turn our page to October. Like, they won't both be there. So which player will be on Cleveland in 2024-25? Type DM for Donovan Mitchell, type DG for Garland. It'll be interesting to see what happens, man. Like, if Donovan Mitchell doesn't sign a long-term extension, well, then it feels like he's going to be dealt so they can recoup some assets. But if Mitchell does sign a long-term deal, which Cleveland should clearly want to do, if Mitchell's game, they should obviously do it. And they should not be concerned if it costs them Darius Garland, because Mitchell's a way better player, and Garland doesn't have the ceiling that Donovan Mitchell is probably at right now. So it's all about what Mitchell wants to do for the future of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Brian Windhorst, who is always tapped in with Cleveland, doesn't know what's going to happen either. Windhorst today on a radio call with Cleveland ESPN said, when I talk to people behind the scenes, it's all over the place. I got people telling me Donovan is staying, and I got other guys saying, and I don't mean like people who don't know, I got other guys saying he ain't signing. So I do want to explore something because obviously, we've talked a lot about Miami and how they should trade for Donovan Mitchell and how, if he is available, it is the number one priority for the Miami Heat this offseason. Do not get it twisted. It will always be the number one priority to try to get Donovan Mitchell. But if he signs an extension and Darius Garland asks out, could the Heat look at the one-time All-Star point guard and try to pivot and trade for him? Garland's actually been pretty solid in the regular season over the past 4 years. He's a consistent three-point shooter, shooting 37% plus every single year in the last 4 at least, and he's been averaging 20 points a game, and he's a pretty solid distributor. The assist numbers went down a little bit with Donovan Mitchell into the fold after being the main guy in 21-22, but he is a very good scorer. I wouldn't call him a great scorer, but he's a good scorer. He's got a good three-point shot on him, good mid-range. He's shifty. He moves quick. The one concern I have with his scoring ability is him finishing at the rim. He is only 6'1", and he struggled a lot in the postseason at finishing at the rim, which we'll talk about in just a second. But Garland is a fascinating point guard that is young, fits Bam's timeline, but I wouldn't call him a second star. I would say at best he's a third option on a title team. And are you really moving the needle, or is Garland moving the needle, which would require to move off a couple first-round picks and a couple young guys? That I'm not sure. But you can answer that question for me before I give you my answer. Would you trade for Darius Garland? If you would, type Y for yes. If you wouldn't and you want to stay away, type your N for no. I'm typing my ends. I'm staying away from Darius Garland. Even though those raw statistics on screen look very, very nice and was a 20-point per game scorer twice, and he averaged 8.5 assists 1 year, decently efficient. Like, sure, is he a better scorer and a better player than Tyler Herro? Absolutely. I don't think that's a question, if we're going to be honest. It's not a question. But the reason why I'm staying away is because I'm just not so sure if he is a 16-game player. And what does that mean? A player that can win in the postseason and rise up in the biggest moments. Now, before we get into that and his playoff downfalls, I do want to showcase his contract because that is always a topic for Miami. Now, Cleveland doesn't have any cap restrictions as of right now, so the Heat could easily match salary with a couple guys like Hero, potentially Duncan Robinson, and other guys. But either way, he signed a 5-year, $197 million extension, and he is playing out the first year this past season. So if you traded for Darius Garland, you would have 4 years, $163.2 million left before he became an unrestricted free agent in 2028 and 2029. But here's the main issue that I'll have. Garland's been in the postseason twice. It hasn't been good. He was a little bit better in the season or the series last year against the New York Knicks, but the Cavs still got packed up out of there in 4 or 5 games. Like, they were not good in that series. Garland had decent numbers, but Mitchell wasn't good, and they just aren't able to fit together. But this postseason against the Orlando Magic and Boston Celtics, I get it, 2 really good defensive teams, and he is the second option on this team, but the numbers were terrible. 15.7 points per game, assist numbers a little bit down. The efficiency is what killed me, and even though you see 42.7%, like, it's like, that's not terrible, and 35% three, like, sure, it's a little bit below average, but it's not a horrific. But I'm telling you, if you watch these games, he was turning the ball over a ton, turned the ball over 3.6 times in the series against the Knicks last year, and then over the postseason this season, those 12 games, averaged 2.5 turnovers a game. Like, he just did not look comfortable. He did not look good in his shot. He did not look comfortable handling the ball. And all of the burden for the Cleveland Cavaliers fell on Donovan Mitchell's shoulders. And he needed Garland to step up if they want to have any chance. And if Garland played normal Darius Garland basketball and that he played in the regular season and showcased the ability to drop 50 points, which he has before in a game, then they probably would have beat the Magic much quicker than they did. But they struggled. And I am just not sold on Garland's abilities to play winning basketball in the biggest moments. And a lot of that, unfortunate as is, has to deal with his size. Like, he's a 6'1", 192-pound point guard. That is going to be someone that gets hunted on a daily basis and a possession basis in the postseason. It's not like he has some crazy wingspan to help get in the passing lanes and create turnovers. It's only 6'5". It's not great. That either is, I mean, it's above average, but it's not like elite, as I'm saying. And we already have a guard in Tyler Hero who's 6'5", 6'6", a little bit lighter in the weight scale, that gets hunted every possession already. And I know you would swap that out for Garland, who's a little bit better offensively, but it would still give you the same issues you have on the defensive side of the floor for someone on offense that isn't exponentially better. And if you are considering making a change at the guard position and trading for a point guard, why wouldn't you just go do it for Trae Young? It feels like Trae is going to be someone that is on the trade market as they look to build in a different direction alongside that number 1 pick, DeJounte Murray, DeAndre Hunter, and Jalen Johnson. So if Trae Young is available and you wanted to go for a smaller point guard, and I'm not saying the Heat should go for a small point guard because I'd rather not, but if you had to choose between Garland and Trae Young, I would trade for Trae Young. And I would argue, even though I think Trae Young is a better player, I think Trae's value in trades might be a little bit lower. Because people really are concerned with his ability to play winning basketball. And, I mean, he's a great assist guy and a great distributor, but he jacks, man. And Garland doesn't jack as much as Trae Young, so maybe that's why they're kind of in the same age range. But I do have a feeling that Trae Young's trade value might actually be a little bit lower than Darius Garland's. Now, I could be wrong on that. It could be about the same. But if you're trading for a point guard and that's the way you want to go in this offseason to make a lateral move or a slight upgrade, I would rather go Trae Young than Darius Garland. And we'll probably talk about Trae Young later on in the offseason. All right, that's going to do it for today's video. Like we mentioned off the top, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. We are trying to win that May-like battle, and I do not want to lose to Knicks, 76ers, or Celtics channels here at Chat Sports. Those would just be absolutely a disaster. So hit that thumbs up icon, and if you're here at the end of the video, you obviously like what you're doing, so help us out. Hit that thumbs up button.